A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
The Yellow Crusade, the Middle East Campaign, Steppe Crusaders, a betrayal of brothers by faith. Friday the 13th. One of the smallest officially recognized states and at the same time the world's largest place of secrets, the Vatican. The total length of all the cabinets where the documents of the Holy See are stored is 85 kilometers. Much of the contents in the Vatican archives are not yet known. Somewhere here or there, at a depth of a couple of tens of meters, there are hoards with priceless manuscripts, testimonies of the Knights Templar, tales of the Crusades, diplomatic correspondence of the Khans with Roman popes. In general, the documents that will help scientists unravel the secrets of one of the most mysterious stories on the Yellow Crusade, who cursed the Templars, or the legend of betrayal. There was a story with one crusading leader who spoke against the Mongols. Ketbugar, with his large detachment, was left alone against a fairly large army, which, according to some reports, was supported by Crusader detachments. He did not want to believe that the Templars could so easily deceive him, and that they would be seduced by the horde of horses. Chapter 1. The Middle East Campaign. In most historical sources, this military operation is called the Middle East Campaign of the Mongols. René Groos, a French researcher, called the Campaign of the Mongols, 1259 to 1260, in the territory of Syria and Palestine, the Yellow Crusade. Intriguing, but an easily explained name. Among the Mongols, the imperial color was the color of a noble metal. A vivid example, these miniatures that were a document of that time. You understand what kind of clothes they wore, what their tents looked like, the yurts, and what the entourage was like. And looking at all this, you understand it was a golden age. Why say the Golden Horde? In fact, historically, there was no such thing. The name Golden Horde first appears in the sources to denote the imperial tent of the great Khan Guyuk. Later, they began to call it the Ulus Juchi. But let's go back to the middle of the 13th century. After the aforementioned Guyuk, Munke, or Mengu, became a Khagan. At the first Kurultai, it was decided to continue the war against China and not the conquered states of the Middle East. The choice of candidates for the most important operation seems surprising. Hulagu was an open admirer of the mystical trend of Buddhism, enjoyed special protection by the Mongolian Khans, and he was ordered to protect the Christian faith. From Lev Gumilev, The Search for a Fictional Kingdom. Hulagu was a brother of the Mongolian Khan Munke. Munke wanted to preserve a single empire. Perhaps that's why he went to the Buddhist brother to protect the Christian faith, believing that in the Middle East, Hulagu would not have any sympathy for the conquered Gentiles, and therefore there will be no desire to separate from the empire. But is it possible to call this a crusade? In any military campaigns, the main meaning is the establishment of military control. On the other hand, to protect the faith of the Hulagu clan, relatives were motivated. The elder wife, Dokuz Khatun, from the tribe of the Kerets, followed Christianity. The zealous Nestorian was also warlord Naiman Ketbugar. In the middle of the 13th century, Christianity professed a significant number of steppe inhabitants. More precisely, one of the varieties of these teachings was Nestorianism. Catholics and Orthodox considered this heretical. In fact, each of the archaeological and medieval sites we dug up, we see the presence of Christian symbols, which shows that Christianity was one kind or another, not only existed peacefully, but also flourished. We know about the famous churches in Merke and Taraz. All historians unanimously note the remarkable religious tolerance of both the founder and heirs of the empire of the world. Freedom of religion was granted to all. Only black magicians, according to the code of the Genghis Khan's laws, were put to death. Not every foreign force that comes to dominate in other lands allows such tolerance, allows the development of culture in this way of indigenous people. So, is it possible to call the Middle East campaign a crusade? And how did the Templars get into the story? Chapter 2, Steppe Crusaders. Treatises, medieval and ancient manuscripts of the peoples of the Caucasus, the Middle and Near East, folios on the Armenian Kipchak, the dream of any researcher. In Armenia, Yerevan. Matena Daran is a unique book repository. The manuscripts that are stored here began to be collected in the 5th century AD. The creator of the Armenian alphabet began to collect them. One of the most local sources is the evidence of the participant of the very crusade, the chronicle of Sumbat Sparapet, or Sumbat, commander-in-chief. This commander, together with his brother, the king of Cilician Armenia, Hetum I, joined the Mongolian campaign voluntarily. The fact remains that in the army of Hulagu, there were a lot of Christians, both Mongols and local people who supported him. For example, the Armenians supported detachments that participated in the campaign against Baghdad. The Armenian king attracted to the union his son-in-law, the Prince of Antioch, a state formed by the Crusaders. Hulagu's army was also joined by Christians of the Middle East, Assyrians, and Greeks. This trip was entrusted with great hopes of the Christian world, connected with the fact that they really will be able to complete the results of the Crusades. Medieval sources say that each ulus had to put in the army Hulagu 2 men from every 10 soldiers. From the whole Mongolian Empire, the troops that participated in this campaign gathered, and they really were very different. For example, from the Ulus of Juchi came the Kipchaks, and the same Modva were part of the army. The number of soldiers varies according to different data from 70 to 120,000. To ensure the success of the expedition to the Middle East, all nuances were taken into account. 4,000 technicians of the Chinese army were mobilized to ensure the operation of mechanisms designed to throw stones and burning tar on enemy cities. Fodder for horses and their replenishment were collected by Hulagu's army all the way. Forward engineers were sent to build bridges over the rivers. Huge warehouses were created. From Georgy Venatsky, the Mongols in Russia. The huge army moved slowly. Along the way, diplomatic battles were fought. The fortresses and cities were offered to lay down their arms and become vassals. In 1258, Baghdad fell. The Mongols spared only Christians and Jews. When Hulagu captured Baghdad, he actually overthrew the caliphate. Many European pro-crusaders, I would say, were very happy. In the European churches conducted solemn masses, images of Hulagu and his wife, the Nestorian Dokuz Khatun, appeared on the pages of the Syrian Bibles. It's strange that those who stood for the defense of Christianity were not happy with all these victories. This was the Templars. Chapter 3, A Betrayal of Brothers by Faith. The silent witness of many historical events on a world scale, Notre Dame de Paris. The construction of this cathedral began in the 12th century, and it was here the Crusaders prayed before leaving on their journey. According to one of the legends, the Templars brought documents for the creators of Notre Dame with unique engineering products. The Crusaders allegedly found them on the Holy Land. Other legends say it was these knights who financed the construction of the cathedral. The latter is quite likely. The Order of the Poor Knights of Christ were very rich. Templars, this is the most famous order, a rich order, which received at the very beginning of its appearance the blessings of the Pope. Moreover, these crusaders obeyed only the Vatican, and in general the governors of the throne of St. Peter gave these knights a lot of privileges. They were released from taxes, they were given an unqualified right to military booty. But the Mongols have come, and it was no longer possible to count on trophies or rich donations to fight against Muslims were also in question. So the Templars had something to lose. They too can be understood. They interacted with the Muslims of the Middle East. They were both enemies and allies. And who are the Mongols? It was not clear. Meanwhile, the steppe army swiftly occupied several Syrian cities. At the same time, their allegedly allied Templars behaved strangely. For example, the prince of the crusading Antioch, who fought on the side of the Hulagu, the Vatican excommunicated him. In any case, fate interfered with the geopolitical game. In autumn 1259, at the height of the Syrian campaign, Hulagu Khan received a notice of the death of his brother, the Supreme Khan Monke. He had to abandon his work under Mongolian law, according to Genghis Khan's custom, and go to the Kurultai to elect a successor. On the conquered territories remained Ketbugu with his army, about 10 to 15,000 people. And then the incredible happened. One of the Crusader barons, whom the Mongols considered to be allies, Julien de Grenier, nicknamed Long-Legged, hijacked reserved herds of horses of Ketbuga. The guard was destroyed. Ketbuga was a nobleman. He even sent his grandson there. Long-Legged Julien killed the grandson of Ketbuga. It was very cruel of him. According to other sources, it was a nephew or even his son. Of course, they could not leave this offense without being punished. The city where the Baron rules was besieged. Julien de Grenier defended his possessions desperately, but unsuccessfully. When the city was taken, they were no longer there. He escaped with his attendants and could not be caught. Did this case play a fatal role in the further history of the Yellow Crusade? According to the version of Lev Gumilev, in retaliation, the Templars began to cooperate with the Mamluks, the Muslims. So all this coincided with the formation of the Mamluk dynasty in Egypt. One of the main tasks that Hulagu posed on Ketbuga was the task of taking the country Mizir. That's Egypt. Hulagu made an ultimatum. Complete obedience, the Mamluks thought, for several days. They remembered too well about slave markets, humiliation. None of these worthy warriors wanted this to be repeated. Better to die in battle. A certain number of Kipchaks were in detachments that came from Central Asia, but at the same time, the Mamluk army also largely consisted of Kipchaks. It so happened that some Kipchaks fought against others. Epilogue, Friday the 13th. They were worthy opponents, equal in strength to each other, but the Mamluk fighters, according to some data, won in sheer numbers. Ketbuga moved to the meeting. The place was chosen well, pastures with water nearby. The ability to change horses could be a decisive factor in this kind of battle. I was just in the valley of Ain Jaluda. The specialist who dealt with the story in detail described where the Mongols stood and where the Mamluks came from and how the battle took place in general and what was happening. Ketbuga was waiting for the enemy from the side of the desert. In the west, there were cities of the Crusaders, the eternal enemies of Mamluks. But it was from there that the warriors of Kutuz and Beybaz, who had rested in knights' castles after the long road, appeared. They were provided with forage and food. This circumstance, according to some researchers, decided the outcome of the battle. Ketbuga fought hard but lost. This last true paladin of the cross behaved very courageously. He did not ask for mercy. Kutuz, who beat Ketbuga, survived his prisoner for only 2 months. Further events developed as an avalanche rolled. Having betrayed the Mongols and Armenians, the Crusaders were left alone with the Mamluks. The agony of the Kingdom of Jerusalem lasted for 31 years. On May 18, 1291, the Crusaders left the Syrian coast. But the consequences of what they did were drawn to beautiful France. From Lev Gumilev, The Search for a Fictional Kingdom. According to one legend, before his death, Ketbuga cursed the Knights of Templar, saying, "Pay the same price." The irony of fate, or just a coincidence? The Templars were also destroyed by those they trusted. The King of France and the Pope of Rome accused the knights of worshipping the devil, in which many of them had to confess after a lot of torture and were executed on Friday the 13th, 1307.